So hello everyone, thanks so much for joining. We have an exciting event here for you all tonight. We have amazing panelists here to speak with you all. My name is Oscar Miranda. I'm the Assistant Director of the First Generation Student Support Services, and I will pass it along to Marcus.
My name is Marcus Elliott. I am the Director of the Odyssey program here at Elon University, and wanted to talk to you a little bit about our panelists, our guests. I have two that I would like to introduce, and then Oscar has two that he would like to introduce. So, Oscar, you want to go ahead?
Perfect. So our first panelist is Yasmine Arrington. She's the founder and executive director of Scholarships, a nonprofit organization that provides college scholarships, mentoring, and a peer support network to children of incarcerated parents, inspiring them to complete their college education. She's also been featured on Teen Vogue, Essence, Black Enterprise, Forbes Magazine, The Washington Post, The Baltimore Times, and ABC and NBC News for her community work. Yasmine has graduated from Elon University with a Bachelor of Arts in Strategic Communications and History, and has earned her Master of Divinity degree from the Howard University School of Divinity. Our next panelist is Greg Honan, a strategic communications consultant at the Atlantic Council. He recently served as the COVID-19 Testing Center Manager at the Democratic Convention and was previously the Chief Research Assistant to David Gergen, CNN's Senior Political Analyst. Greg holds a Master in Public Policy from the Harvard Kennedy School and a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science from Elon University.
Thank you, Oscar. We'll go ahead and introduce our other two guests. First of all, we have Mr. Kenneth Brown Jr. He is a fellow for the A.J. Fletcher Foundation, which is a philanthropic organization that works to improve the lives and well-being of all North Carolinians. He leads communication projects, research efforts, and other projects for the foundation and with partner organizations. He's a proud graduate of Elon University 2019. And our final panelist for the evening is President Emeritus Leo Lambert, who is a professor of education, where he served as president at Elon from 1999 to 2018. He is the co-author of the Undergraduate Experience, Focusing Institutions on What Matters Most, and a forthcoming book, Relationship Rich Education, How Human Connections Drive Success in College. Welcome to our panelists. Dr. Jean Ratigan, I will pass it off to her, which is our Vice President for Access and Success.
Thank you, Marcus. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. I'm delighted to see just how many of you students have logged on for this month's combination First Gen Odyssey session devoted to mentoring. And one we're calling Mentoring 101, the whys and the hows. Today, we have a wonderful panel, as you can tell just listening to their introduction there. And this is an Elon panel in every sense of the word. And I'm calling it an Elon panel because our guests are all associated with Elon in some very significant ways. Dr. Leo Lambert is our President Emeritus, as you've heard, who, along with our panelists, Yasmine, Kenny, and Greg, they have done some really wonderful work in and out of Elon, and we're going to hear a little bit more about that. So when they talk to you about mentoring in the Elon context, they know of which they speak. So Dr. Lambert, let's begin with you. You were a very successful president of Elon for almost 20 years. You could have written a book on just about any topic about how to be a successful president, about the role of higher education in a polarized world, or higher education in 2020 in the age of COVID or whatever, right? But yet, you chose to write a book on what makes an excellent undergraduate education. And you landed on mentoring. What, in your experience as a successful president, made you come to that decision that yes, mentoring is that, as you often say, secret sauce in a successful undergraduate education? And why did you feel the need to write it down in a book for the rest of us?
Well, it's a great question, Jean. Peter Felton, who's a professor of history here at Elon and director of the Center for Engaged Learning, and I have been working on this book for 2 years, and it comes out October 6th from the Johns Hopkins Press. We know, research has told us, Jean, for more than 4 decades that the single variable that best predicts whether a student is going to persist in college is whether they are engaged in a significant relationship with a faculty member. We've known this for a very long time. And so Peter and I wanted to update this research, and knowing that the nature of the American college student has changed a lot in the last 40 years, wanted to visit campuses across the country, a diverse array of American higher education, from Hispanic serving institutions to HBCUs to the Ivy League to research universities and community colleges, et cetera, et cetera. We also worked with our colleague Jason Husser and did a survey ourselves of 4,000 college graduates nationally. And the students will really be interested in these results. And what we found was that these college graduates, all different types of institutions again, who had 7 to 10 mentors in college, faculty members or staff members, were 3 times as likely to be extremely satisfied with their college experience and to say that college was worth it. And even for those students that had just 1 to 2 significant relationships, they were much more satisfied with college than those graduates who reported that they had no significant relationships with a faculty member or staff member in school, which is a very sad thing to think about it when you contemplate. Peter and I are also so committed to this work because we know, and I think the students will be interested in this as well, that engagement in college and having mentors in college translates into success after college. You're more likely to be engaged at work if you've had significant mentors in college, and all different types of well-being after college are going to be heightened if you've experienced mentors in college. So for so many, the research tells us very clearly, people who have mentors make more money, they're happier, they get more promotions, they find more meaning in life. Unfortunately, I think American higher education doesn't oftentimes tell students how important finding mentors is. It's really the most important thing when you strip away everything else about college. Developing a set of mentors over time, faculty members, staff members, and influential peers is really at the heart of the undergraduate experience. And that's why Peter and I wrote our book.
Interesting. So clearly you see the importance of this building relationship piece, right? I mean, you even titled the book this. So you've sort of narrowed it down to that piece is key to you. But here's the thing. For some young people, the act of going out, building relationships, finding somebody, creating that space to build a relationship is as natural as breathing, right? It comes easy for them. For others, not so much. It is actually quite frightening to go out and meet someone and try to build a relationship. Can be a little challenge. Is there anything from your research which speaks to that?
Well, I tell you from my, first of all, students, from my personal experience, that at a place like Elon, I think it is a very safe assumption that almost every faculty member and every staff member on this campus would be anxious to develop a relationship with you. And I think sometimes we approach people from the point of view of, oh, I don't want to bother them, they're too busy. That's why we're here. We're here for you. You're the most important thing. You're the reason the university exists. And so I think it's important for us to have a mental framework that these folks want to be involved in my life. They want to be an influence with you. And so go into thinking about these relationships with that confidence. I think also we sometimes think about having a mentor is kind of a heavy thing, and we typically don't walk up to somebody and say, hey, would you be my mentor? You know, it usually starts with really small little things like going to class early and talking with a professor or asking good questions in class, having your screen on Zoom when you're in class, inviting a professor out for coffee, stopping by for office hours, sending an email. All these are little steps that work towards building a relationship. It's important that you, I think, also adopt the framework that, you know, a lot of this is in your hands. The faculty are there. I think they're going to be willing, but it's one of these things where you need to take a step, as well as the faculty or staff or influential peer taking a step too. Another little secret is, I think this is harder, Dr. Rohr, maybe a little bit sometimes for people that think of themselves as introverts, but many, many faculty members are introverted. And so I think they understand what it's like to be on your end and maybe to be a little apprehensive, but you got to go for it with the confidence that you are great people, you have a lot to offer, and if you have shared intellectual or other interests with people that you want to develop mentoring relationships with, be confident they want to have relationships with you too.
So it's from what you're saying, it's up to the students to sort of make that approach. So the students on this Zoom call listening to you now are first gen and Odyssey scholars for the most part. Tell us, if you will, what you found in your research that speaks directly to our students.
Well, we wrote a lot in our book about first generation college students, students of color, students that go to school part-time, students who are working, students who are taking care of children, students who are taking care of elderly parents. This group of students is soon to be the new American majority of college students. I think that if you're on a predominantly white campus, you tend to think, oh, this is what a typical American college student looks like a typical student at Elon. That's not the case nationally. And so what we learned in our research was very clear. And not only our research, but lots of very current research clearly says that mentoring is important for all students, but mentoring and significant relationships are doubly important for first generation students. And part of the reason for that is I think that if you come from a family where your parents or many of your siblings have gone to school before you, you learn a lot through osmosis. You know, you learn about college terminology and how the system works, and so you come in with a real leg up. And the academy, higher education, Elon, places like us, there's a lot of hidden codes. Many of you students have probably experienced this, that you know, we use a lot of terminology that you might not be familiar with. Maybe you're the first in your family to also study abroad or to think about doing undergraduate research. When you have mentors that can help coach you through these new experiences, it makes a big difference. And Jean, I think the other thing that I would say is that at every kind of institution that we visited, from the Ivy League to community colleges, we discovered that there were so many students who felt that they were just one conversation away from stopping out. And it's why it's so important to have multiple mentors, because we don't want any student to stop out of college. And so when you surround yourself with people that can be your support system, be your personal board of directors, your chances of persisting in college are going to increase dramatically. And, you know, I think the Odyssey program here is the proof to that. There's a built-in mentoring program here, and Odyssey Scholars at Elon graduated at a rate higher than the student body as a whole. And so mentoring works, we know this, and we just need to see more of this kind of practice across higher education. And it's not just
Well, you talk about. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's not just mentoring that makes a bigger difference for first-gen students. High-impact practices like study abroad, undergraduate research, participating in civic engagement or service learning. These experiences, research tell us, how internships, another big one, have even a greater effect on first-generation students than they do for other students. So double impact is the short answer to your question.
Thank you. You mentioned, let me just stay on that a little bit. You mentioned talking to many students across institutions and so on and so forth. Is there any particular narrative or conversation that you found
Yes. I think we lost Jean for a minute there, but I think I got the gist of her question. Can you all hear me? Okay. Yes. Okay. So we did this interview at Oakton Community College outside of Chicago, and we interviewed this student by the name of Joshua Rodriguez, who told us this story about, he's in Calculus 2, and he hits a wall in Calculus 2, and he decides, I can't do Calculus 2. It is really hard, and I'm probably not smart enough to take this class. He had stopped out of college at the University of Illinois, and Oakton was his second run at going to college. And his professor, Professor Arco, said to him, Joshua, I don't want you to do the homework tonight for class. I want you to go home and I want you to read this article on imposter syndrome. You ever heard that expression, imposter syndrome?
Yep.
And so Joshua did that, and Professor Arco said to him, and come in and talk to me after class for the next class. And Joshua said, I realized that I'm not the only person that feels this way, that I don't belong here, that this is hard, that it's very common for college students. And so he decided, I'm sticking with this. He got a tutor, really smart guy, got a tutor, finished the class with an A. I think that was another big theme of our research, Jean, that, you know, all of us, including me, harbor feelings of self-doubt at times and imposter syndrome. And Jean is a faculty member, and Marcus is a staff member, and Oscar is a staff member, and Greg doing work at the Democratic Convention. Do you ever feel like you have imposter syndrome? I mean,
absolutely.
It's human. It is so human. And so to recognize that this is part of the human condition, it's not about you, it's about everybody. And we can work through it. And if we have mentors, so that Professor Arco is an example of the kind of faculty member that is so critical in a student's life. It was that critical conversation that made a difference in Joshua's life. And where we need higher education to be is for students to be surrounded by these conversations of support and care and nurturing and welcome every day.
I think right now would be a good time to transition into some of our panelists. So if you please, maybe let's start with Yasmine. If we could just hear, you know, what has your experience been with mentorship at Elon? You know, what has been the impact mentorship has had on your life?
Thank you, Oscar, and thank you, Elon University. It's always an honor and a pleasure to come back to where I belong. Mentorship honestly has made all of the difference in my life. And I can say that honestly and truly. I'm just so grateful even to this day. And I know I'll be internally grateful for the level of support and mentorship that I received from faculty and staff, from my classes to my education, you know, academic advisors, to even in the cafeterias, the staff there. I mean, you know, I believe that, and to be completely transparent, you know, to this point that Dr. Lambert has made based on the research, you know, even I myself, when I grew up in Washington, D.C., I went to DC public schools, and when I grew up in the 90s, in the early 2000s, it was, you know, in the community I was living in and going to public schools, it was predominantly African American and also Latinx, right? And so, you know, and it's not just that, that's only one aspect of sort of how I grew up, but coming to Elon was a culture shock. It was. And it took me a while. It took me about 2 years to really get settled and fully adjusted. Even though I might have been, you know, doing well academically, otherwise it was like, whoa, you know, and I've had those moments where I was like, ooh, I don't know if this is the right fit for me. I don't know if I belong here. But I just want to affirm for you that you do belong here. You belong at Elon. You belong in North Carolina, in Elon, North Carolina, and Burlington, North Carolina, and anywhere you step foot. And not only are you there to receive higher education and training and support and mentorship that will help you in the rest of your life throughout your career as you take twists and turns, but your mentors sometimes are also there for those very personal moments and even deep and dark moments. And the last thing I'll say, just to show you just like how many mentors I had at Elon, and Dr. Lambert was one of them. And I don't know what I was thinking, but I gathered up the courage to schedule a coffee. He allowed for students to have coffees with him. So my freshman year, I scheduled a coffee with Dr. Lambert, and trust me, I was shaking in my boots, but he was so welcoming and so kind. And he didn't even know me from Joe, and he put on a scholarships t-shirt and rocked it and took a picture with me. I mean, that's the type of support that you can receive at Elon from various professors, faculty, and staff. So just to show you really quick, and then I'll pass on the baton, that some of the mentors I had at Elon University, some are no longer with us, some are no longer there, but Miss Nagatha Tompkins, Dr. Lambert, Dr. Amy Johnson, the late Dr. Hadi Frantani, and she was phenomenal. Dr. Anthony Hatcher, Dr. Rodney Clare, Dr. Michelle Ferrier, Mr. Jason Kingsley Aryeh, Miss Janice Ratliff, Tanya and Sonia Stanley, Chaplain Jan Fuller, President Connie Book, and at the time she was actually my lead mentor, and countless others. Don't be afraid to ask. You know, like, what's the worst that can happen, right? They can only say yes or no, and you know, 9 times out of 10, I'm sure that folks, as Dr. Lambert said, would be more than happy to support you And one of the ways that I found, I was able to kind of identify people who would potentially be my mentor or would be happy to mentor me, were folks where I just like saw that they were so passionate about their subject matter that they were teaching in the class. Those professors that were just like really engaged, that I was comfortable having conversations with, who would answer my questions, who would stay, you know, would be willing to stay with me after class to do lunch and do coffee. Things like that might be potential indications that this person might potentially be a good mentor.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yasmine. I'm sure you're hearing from Yasmine. She's going down her list of mentors, right? You can see it's not a matter of finding one person. I think she listed sounds like 10 or 15 right there. Sort of part and parcel of Dr. Lambert's research about the importance of finding these multiple sources where you can get help or assistance or just point me in the direction. So Kenny and then Greg, talk to us about your experience at Elon in mentoring, being mentored.
Yeah, so hey y'all, nice to be here. Love Elon, go EU. Grateful to share with you. And like for me, like I was that kid who did not know what a mentor was, did not want to go up and talk to someone, did not feel like going up and talking to someone. Just you know, coming from a low income background and just coming from a place where like the community was involved in the development of a person, I just never heard of this concept of having a mentor. And even that's something I still struggle with now, you know, and just trying to figure out like, what am I doing after my fellowship, and figuring out like who can be mentors to me. And one thing that helps me is that when we talk about mentors, when we talk about mentorship, essentially what we're talking about is someone or a group of people who is dedicated to your success. They are dedicated to you. They want to invest in you. And as Dr. Lambert mentioned, like it does start with those small things. I have never like walked up to someone and be like, bam, I want you to be my mentor. And then we're going to rock and roll. Like I've never been that person. Some people are that person. That's okay. That's not my ministry. But for me, it's just more of just trying to find those connections and honestly just trying to sometimes things just fly over my head. But just sometimes looking back and realizing people who have been there along, whether it's someone like Marcus or someone like Dr. Lambert or Dr. Dooley, or Dean Jenowin Patterson, and just figuring out that these are people that have helped me in some of my most trying moments as a student, whether it's professionally or personally, but they're also invested in my success. For like example, a couple of years ago, when I was serving as student body president in J-term, there was this whole incident where you know, someone drew some racist images on a whiteboard in the rec center. And I was out of the state, but like my president hat was on because I was like, oh my gosh, this is horrible, like we gotta do something. And so like I was on the phone with Dean Patterson, Dean P, just to talk about how do we respond, like what do we do? And so you know, having a go-to person that's like, there's this issue, I need your help. And also, as Dr. Lambert mentioned, you know, like influential peers. I have been so blessed to, for whatever reason, lots of people look to me for various things. And just, you know, being able to serve as a mentor in the Odyssey program to our current juniors, which is crazy to say, but also to a group of students who just graduated. And, you know, just one thing that I tell them is that, like, I'm here for them. If you need anything, let me know. And so don't discount the people around you, your students around you. Some of the most trying moments and some of the most solutions to those moments have been from other students, whether it was students at Elon or other student body presidents, or other just students in the area that I needed help in. But all you gotta do is just get started. You just gotta take that first step and be like, hey, I'm interested in what you want to do. Your work interests me, your subject, whatever you do, can we chat for a few minutes? And then just go from there. And then whatever happens next will happen next.
Awesome. Greg?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I think I want to say two things about my experience with mentoring at Elon. The first is that I think I was bad at being mentored at first. I think I didn't really know what that actually meant to be a mentee, and we talk a lot about mentors and what makes a good mentor. I didn't really know what it meant to be a good mentee, and I think two things sort of happened for me. The first is I met Heidi Frontani, who Yasmine mentioned, and also that's how we met at Elon. But Heidi was a very forceful mentor and sort of showed me what it was like to be mentored and was very clear about what you should expect from a mentor. And I was so lucky to have her in my first year because I sort of saw like, oh, okay, this is what I should expect from a really good mentor. It's someone who asks me hard questions and follows up with me and, you know, says, wait, why are you actually taking that class? Like, I thought you weren't interested in that topic anymore. And after having that experience, I sort of learned, like, I kind of learned the nuts and bolts of actually being mentored and was able to expect that and draw that out from other people. And then the second thing, echoing something that Ken just said, which I think is totally right, mentors don't have to be tenured faculty members. And I had lots of great faculty mentors at Elon. But I also had so many good staff members and fellow students who were like a year older than me, or even in my class who were good mentors. Probably the most important mentor to me was, for my time at Elon, was actually my boss at my internship, my first year out of college, or my first summer in college. And he didn't judge me when I asked questions about like the nuts and bolts of mentoring. I could go to him and be like, what do I even say in an email when I'm asking this person for an advice? Like, what questions do I ask in a meeting? Do I need to send a thank you note? Like, what do I wear? Like, all that type of stuff. And like, you know, now I don't have to ask those sorts of questions, but like, I still call that person. Like, I still know him, I'm still friends with him. And I still go to him for sort of the like inside baseball advice on mentoring. So that was like I think that's the second thing that was pretty important to me, is I had people who were sort of like mini mentors who weren't like, you know, tenured faculty, or they weren't like, you know, a really important boss at you know, where I was working, but they were someone who were, you know, they were 3 years older than me and they could give me advice and sort of be honest, and I could be honest with them and not worry about being judged for my questions.
Thank you. The rich and meaningful. I'm going to open the floor up to students to ask a question. Just turn your mic on. This is the time. We have them here captured with us right now, and we have some nice nuggets here that are coming to us. So just turn your mic on and ask your questions.
Sure, I'll go. This is for anyone who wants to answer. What would you say is the most influential advice or nugget of wisdom that any of your mentors have shared with you?
I'll go first if no one else wants to. All right, so I would say it's influential because it was the first thing I thought of when you asked that question, and I think about this all the time still when I'm thinking about jobs, or when I was thinking about where to go to grad school, or like whatever. Peter Felton, who Dr. Lambert knows well and writes with, once told me, I was debating a bunch of different like types of jobs. I was like talking to him about like research assistant jobs and like political campaign jobs, and I kept talking about like you know, how oh, I like someday I want to get to this place, but maybe, you know, I could kind of take a left turn here, and like this would be a good like route from the other side. And he was like, Greg, you just need to go directly towards things that you love. And I like had no one had like sort of said that to me so directly and been like, what are you doing? Just like, you clearly like that, go do that. And I think about that now as I like really with like a lot of decisions I make, but definitely with career choices. I think a lot about like, is this actually the thing I love the most? And if it is, I should be going directly towards it. Yeah, he had a lot of very good pieces of wisdom that were very succinct. So I remember a lot of them.
One day, my first year, I was sitting in the Creed and I was talking with Sylvia Munoz about something, about an ideal I had. And she said, do it. And I was like, huh? I was like, what do you mean do it? But she was like, do it. And I can't remember what the thing was exactly, but I remember that moment because it was also one of those moments for me. It just solidified that, yes, I can do it and I have the agency to do it. And I know that if I do whatever thing, that I have people that can back me up or that can help guide me. Whether it's doing the most bravest, the most challenging thing ever, or just getting started on something. Mentors should be able to guide you. They should be able to see the spark in you and to be able to say, do it, because they know you can do it. And deep down, you know you can do it too, but you just haven't gotten to that point yet. And so that's just one thing that popped into my head is just do it.
I would say that a good mentor provides this really good blend of challenge and support. So it's so important. I remember my freshman year of college, spring semester, I was taking an American literature class, and my professor, James Scholes, who was a great teacher, remarked before class one day, oh, I read your paper, your first paper of the semester. I thought it was really good. I was happy. I thought I was going to get an A on it. And I got it back, and it was just covered in his writing about how it could be a better paper. And he said, I think you should rewrite this because I think it could be a really good paper. And there's a lot of good ideas here. And I didn't know quite how to take it. Certainly wasn't what I expected, but that invitation, that challenge to me was just such an influential point in my life. So sometimes I think what mentors offer us is more work to do, and to be better and to try harder. And we have to look at that as a gift. It's such an important gift. And I think about that interest that he showed in me as an 18-year-old young man as a pivotal point in my life. And so be open to that kind of challenging feedback from people that will turn out to be your mentors.
And to kind of go off of Dr. Lambert, on the mentee side, they're also like, you have to be willing to do it. You have, whether it's you mustering up the 7 seconds of courage that you need in that moment to say what's on your mind, and you just embrace that 7 seconds, you say it, and then you just go back. Like I remember, and I'm going to draw on my Odyssey experience, serving as a mentor. There were, Odyssey week for most of the participants is a very vulnerable and emotional week in dealing with all the things, that we don't want to focus on, our internal feelings or the opportunities that we're given. And there were many times where at the end of the day, me and my 5 students, we were just sitting in silence. Because I wasn't going to interrupt that moment, but I also wanted to give them the space to say what was on their mind, because I know that they also have to be willing. I need to show a willingness to be quiet, but to also show that, but to also allow that challenging silence, I think, and to allow them to step into that space and to be willing to share, for them to share what's on their mind. And so there also has to be a will, whether it's for a long time or a short time. You have to be willing on the mentee side to do whatever you might be called to do whatever you've been asked to do. And that is something special.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin. I'm a senior here at Elon. And I wanted to ask, so we talk about mentorship, and I mean, like, I don't know, like, this is a good question, I guess. It's like, what if, like, you don't feel like the person who you consider to be your mentor isn't the right fit for you? How would you be able to deal with that? And like, how would you like try to find another mentor who would be the best fit for you and like what you're trying to do in the future?
What a great question. I can't wait to hear what our panel has to say.
Well, I'll just say, I've actually had that experience. It wasn't as smooth as I had hoped for. It wasn't at Elon though. It was in high school. I just felt as though excuse me if you hear the puppy barking. I had this experience in high school, and I mean, I just ultimately, and I can only speak from personal experience, but I think the best, honesty is the best policy. And I think that you can do it in a way that is, for me, I typically when I was growing up, I had been that type of person that did not like confrontation. I didn't want to have hard conversations. I'd just rather avoid it or hope that it'll go away. But I mean, it does happen. And actually the same thing with professors, because there was one time where I was taking a class and I mean, I liked the professor, but they went so fast through the material. And I was like, I cannot keep up. I just can't. And so, I had to have that conversation and have them, they had to sign off the paper to release me from the class so that I could, take it at another point in time. But, maybe just say, hey, so-and-so, doctor, professor, I thank you so much for your willingness to open up to me, to be a mentor. But, I just, at this time, I don't think it's a good fit. It's not really working for me. Or something like that, but I think the best policy is to be honest. Cause you don't want to leave someone hanging, cause that may turn people off, or it might not leave you with a really good reputation. And your name does carry. so, I would just say tie up loose ends. And if you're having you don't know like how to have that conversation, maybe talk to another one of your close mentors or professors. You don't have to necessarily reveal the identity of that person, but just say, this is just not working. Like, what do I do? And you'd be surprised. You'll get really good advice. I hope that helps.
It's a great question, Kevin. And the other thing I would add to Yasmine's really good advice is to remember that what you want to develop in college is a constellation of mentors. Pick a constellation of stars in the sky. There's a lot of stars up there in the sky, and you want to have a lot of stars in your constellation. And so the person that might not be the perfect fit right now, by all means, go find somebody else. But that other person might turn out next month, next year, to be somebody that turns out to be more important to you at a different time. Not everyone is going to be the same kind of mentor. Some mentors are going to be people that you're going to be in touch with 40 years from now, who advised you on 90 drafts of your senior thesis, and you'll end up leaving Elon and feeling like, well, that professor is my colleague and my friend, and we are going to keep in touch for the rest of our lives. But not all mentor relationships are like that. Sometimes we reference in our book this expression, mentors of the moment. Sometimes you'll have one conversation with somebody that will upend your world. They might help you see that you have a gift or a talent that you didn't recognize was there. But that conversation will be something that you'll remember for a very long time, like my conversation with Professor Scholes. So don't think of this as I only get a very few. Hopefully you'll have many. And on given days and for given problems, depending on where you are in your life, some mentors will be more important to you than others at any one point in time. Great question.
I have a question too. I'm Ariana, I'm a sophomore, and I think just kind of going off along with Kevin's question, how did you balance the relationships that you had with multiple mentors and like making sure that you were still communicating with them on the like level that you would wanted, assuming that you had like a unique relationship with each one?
Another great question.
Well, I can start off on that one. It's a really good question. So yeah, it takes a lot of work to maintain relationships with mentors, and I would work really hard, especially at Elon when I was still sort of learning how to do it. I would work really hard to send like regular email updates and then follow up with like, coffee meetings or office hours or things like that. And I sort of got into a rhythm where like, I sort of had oh, this person's a 6-month mentor where I like check in with them every 6 months. And like, there's this other person who I talk to every 3 months. And like, this is a person like that I talk to like once a month because I really rely on their advice for what I'm doing at this point in my life. And there were a few points, I think I really did this when I changed jobs. I would actually sit down and say, who are the people in my life that I need to tell about this? Because I would want to email them and tell them that I'm changing my job or going to school or whatever. But it was also a useful moment to take stock of who my mentors were and who I was, who I needed to reach out to and who I was sort of relying on at that time. And those lists of people I would keep them, and it was very useful to sort of see over the years when I was like, oh, like, at that point I was talking to these 10 or 15 people a lot about, this career change. And then 2 years later, like I found 3 or 4 new mentors who were helping me with something else I was interested in. So you don't have to like keep a spreadsheet or anything, but it's helpful every once in a while to stop and say, wait, who are my mentors? And maybe write them down somewhere and keep it for a while.
That's a good point that I want to follow up on, because that's something that I personally struggle with, especially in this space of my life now, where the next few months I'm going to have to start thinking about what's next and how does that next step fit into my plan, and who do I talk to, and who do I go to. And so the past few months for me, I've just like been reaching back into my circle, just like have conversations with folks to just learn more about their story. But scheduling check-ins is good. Every few months or so, I have a list of like 10 or 15 people, and I just write this long email that's just an update on my life. Here's where I've been, here's what's going on, and here's what I'm looking forward to. And then I also leave an invitation to, set up a Zoom call or a phone call or something just to catch up. As Greg said, you don't have to keep a spreadsheet or something. And we all get busy, but just like, every so often, just sending an update like, this is my life right now. And I want to make sure that you stay up to date in that.
And social media helps too. I'm Facebook friends with Greg and Kenneth and Yaz and others, and that's a good way to just check in on people's lives too.
Thank you all.
So we have just about enough time for maybe 2 more questions.
This is a bit of a silly question. And hi, I'm Nija. I'm a 2nd year here. And my question is, do you have any book recommendations other than Dr. Lambert's book?
We'd put that on the top of the list, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I would say that's not a silly question. That's a great question. I read a book going into college. I read a book called Making the Most of College by Richard Light. And I know Dr. Lambert has read it, and I think his book is probably cites this book a lot. But it was a good, it's probably like 15 years old now or 20 years old now. But it was a really good, just like practical advice book on how to make the most of college, which is why it's called that. And that was actually the book, I think my parents made me read it. or they like gave it to me and suggested I should read it. And somewhere in that book, he says that you should, every semester you should get one more mentor. So by the time you leave, you have 8 mentors. And I read that, and I didn't really know what that meant, but I had that in my head that was like a thing I should do. And looking back, I think that was actually like pretty influential. So that's a really good book if you have time to read it, and hopefully you still have time to use the advice in it.
I have a couple of book recommendations. It's not like, doesn't say shout mentoring, but I think it can kind of help, kind of self-help books and suggestions in terms of, because honestly, when it boils down to it, a mentorship is a type of relationship. And so it's a give and take, and it's really about getting to know people. And so there's one book that's called How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And then there is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey.
I was going to recommend Dick Light's book too. Richard Light is professor of education at Harvard. And the book that Greg referenced is a great book for undergraduates to read and get a lot out of. But just Google Brad Johnson, who's a professor at the United States Naval Academy. And Brad is an expert on mentoring as well and writes a lot of very accessible stuff. He's another really good source of reading for students about mentoring.
Thank you.
So I have one more before I let you guys go. So in thinking about mentoring and all the things that you've told us, what little tips can you give us about how to make effective use of the time that mentees and mentors spend together? Because time, as you know, is a very valuable commodity that it's sometimes difficult to find, right? So what tips can you give us?
I have something that I've been using more lately now than in college, because I didn't really get it as much. This is just me personally, but I would say with any of your mentors, I offer this as a suggestion. Kind of sit with yourself and think about, since you have this golden one-on-one time with this individual, think ahead about the questions that you would like to ask, and questions that you want a specific answer about or advice about, and write them down. You don't have to, but I'm visual, so I like to see things. They help me to remember, and write them down. You can bring them with you. I think that's the best way to navigate time, because sometimes, nowadays, some people may only be able to give you 30 minutes or maybe 45, but it's usually anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes. So you gotta spitfire your questions and be prepared. Just prepare for it.
Yeah, I completely agree. That's really good advice. I also write down questions, and when I was at Elon, I would write down a few questions. And Nyjah, your question about books, I would almost always ask, because faculty love sharing books. So that should be your first question when you go to office hours. The other thing related to that is, your mentor's time is valuable, and you want to think about what they can answer or help you with that you otherwise wouldn't be able to figure out. They're going to be able to help you look at some problem in your life or a challenge or an opportunity in a new and interesting way. And I think, especially now at this point where I'm not at Elon, but I still talk to a lot of my mentors from Elon. And when I do talk to them, it's usually because there's just something that I can't figure out by myself, and I know I need to talk. The thing I would say is I really use like when I'm talking to mentors who are, you know, closer to me in age, like I really use that time to strategize about how to work with other mentors, right? And you should do that with your friends and, you know, your classmates. Like sometimes you need to do that. Like sometimes it's I actually don't know what to talk about with my mentor and I need to talk to my roommate or like, you know, a few friends to figure out what that time should actually look like.
All of those are good points. I was like, dang, they took him. But as one question that, especially that I've been using more, is asking someone, how did you get to where you are at now? And so hearing other people's stories and hearing the past and the twists and the turn. So I would say ask that question, or maybe ask, what are you working on right now? Or what is the most exciting thing that you are working on right now? I believe that we can learn a whole lot from just people sharing about the things that they're doing, whether we are doing it intentionally or not. So I would say keep those two questions in your back pocket.
Well, thank you so very, very much, panelists, for taking the time to spend with us, for helping us to understand and to create spaces in our heads about how we might go about finding mentors. Let's give them a round of applause and a snap, snap, snap. We thank you so very, very, very much. We really, really appreciate your time. We thank you for your support in our work. We thank you for embracing our Odyssey and first generation students the way we do. And thank you. Marcus, Oscar, and Catherine, let me turn it over to you.
Awesome. Wow, the session has been amazing. Lots of useful nuggets to take away from this session. Thank you to our panelists, to our audience for joining in. Students, please keep an eye out this upcoming week and the weeks to follow for any upcoming events. I know that there's some events around game night, some financial literacy sessions, and information sessions about the National and International Fellowships Office. So please keep an eye out for those. We look forward to seeing you at those events. Marcus or Catherine, do you all have anything to add?
Yeah, just want to make sure that everybody took in those valuable nuggets of wisdom and implement them how you see fit throughout your journey at Elon. And those are just important pieces to help enhance your journey throughout this collegiate experience. So just take it and make it your own.
We'll be posting this on our website, and I think we could also share it broadly because it's some really, really important bits of information that you shared with us. Thank you so much, folks. And when next you're on campus, Mooney 302, come visit us.
Awesome. This has been amazing. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.